Welcome to The Secrets of Success. By following the proven techniques of the guests who appear on this series, you'll learn that even successful people run into detours and failures, and how you can apply their success techniques to change your life.
You're now listening to the most unique show on radio, the show dedicated to making you a success. If you want to win friends and influence people and achieve your goals, just listen to our guest, Christopher Hadnagy. Chris, thanks for being with us today.
Thanks for having me on the show.
Chris, you are the author of a book, Human Hacking, which I love, but it's a unique term because we usually think of this with computers. So can you explain what human hacking is about?
Sure. So, lately we've been using the term hacking for everything, like life hacks, food hacks, all that different type of stuff, anything that people want to alter. And human hacking is just that. It's learning how people make decisions and learning how we communicate, and then altering and using those methods to achieve our goals.
And you make it sound so nice, but you start your book out, it almost starts like a mystery because you're kind of sneaking around a plant. But let me tell our audience, you're one of the good guys. Usually when we hear hacking, it's somebody who just got out of jail or has been in trouble, let's say, or maybe works on the dark side of things. But that's not what we're talking about today. You mentioned that you actually help clients and companies understand and fix their weaknesses. Can you explain to us how?
Sure. So if you think of it like a doctor, like you may have a little pain somewhere, so you go and the doc does a few tests and a physical, and he tells you what's wrong. That's what we do for companies. They call us and they say, we think we may be vulnerable with our security guards or with our infrastructure. Can you test it? So like you mentioned, our opening story, we go out to buildings and we break into them. Sometimes in the dead of night, sometimes in broad daylight. We phish their employees. We call them on the phone and get their passwords. And none of that is done maliciously. And then we report back to the company and we say, hey, you have a small hole over here. You got a little problem you got to fix here. And we help them develop programs to fix all the different gaps that we saw when we did those tests.
And Chris, as I said to you before the show, if our audience could see you, you're probably the perfect person for this job because to look at you, you look very endearing. You would, if I had to pick, I think that quiz show used to be, what's this person's profession or something? I would think that you're either the town priest or the town accountant or just that teacher that everybody comes to for advice and is really loving and they dedicate the yearbook to you and everything else. So you're very disarming in that you have such a nice, polite face. You don't look like that kind of guy who would be on the mixed martial arts and kill me if I talked to you.
Bless you, my son. Thank you for that. Actually, I got lucky with that because that's exactly what I like to hear is when people see me, I'd like to be the guy that they don't expect to be the bad guy. Because that helps me with my job all the time. So thank you.
Now, your disarming way about you, a lot of times in the world, we hear that in terms of either a salesperson who might be talking to us, and within a few minutes before we know it, he's telling us, and we like it, why we should have upped our insurance and how we could be leaving our family in the lurch. Or perhaps, as you said, they're getting some information from us, and next week our house is broken into.
Yeah.
Are you often accused, or are you ever even accused of being a kind of a con man, a scammer on the negative side? We know you work on the positive side, on the business side, but do people say to you, I don't want to hire you. You're one of those bad guys or you, whatever?
That's a good question. So from the corporate side, people never say that to me because they when they're hiring someone like me, they know what they need. So they're not looking at that. But I often get that. I don't want to use the word accusation, but I often get people that say that in public. Like I just did a Reddit AMA where people can come in and ask you questions. And I had a bunch of people that were like, so you're just a con man. You're just a sleazeball. You're just a guy who does this and laughs at people who fail. And I'm like, no, that's not me at all. But I think sometimes the lay person, not the business person who's hiring us, they may have a hard time connecting those dots to see why we're needed, and that I'm not just doing this all the time. We use human hacking like that my new book talks about in a positive way, but we're not just walking all the time like stealing from people and getting them to give us things that are valuable to them.
Can you give us one of the examples? It can be from your book or just something you've done yesterday, even so our audience can kind of picture when you're doing this human hacking as opposed to, I guess, computer hacking. what it looks like and how to be aware of it.
Sure. So thank you for that too. So I have this one story I really love because it kind of defines the whole process. As my wife, my daughter, and I were flying back from London in Heathrow Airport. And when we were going to the airport, I said, hey, when we get there, maybe I'll just ask if there's any upgrades, like how much it will cost. And I thought we probably can't afford it. It was Virgin Airlines. And if anyone's ever looked at first class there, it's like enough for a house. So I'm like, well, we're in economy. We'll just see. So I'm pushing this cart, or what they call a trolley, in, and I have all this luggage on it, and it falls over. And I make a joke of it because everyone turns around, and normally you'd be embarrassed, but I say, oh, a dumb American had an accident on the M5. And people laugh. All the Brits laugh at me. And I see this woman behind the counters laughing, and I said to my wife, oh, she's in a good mood. Let's go to her. So we get up to the counter, and my wife is not part of this field at all. She is just naturally like the nicest person on the planet. So she's talking to this woman, and she's complimenting her makeup and saying how beautiful it matches her scarf and all of this. And one thing leads to another. This woman is smiling out, just I could see it all over. And that's when my human hacking hat goes back on. So I lean in, put my arm around my wife, and I say to the woman, we probably can't afford it, but I'm just curious, what's the path to upgrade to like first class or something from where we're at? And this woman doesn't even look at me. She's typing, then looks up and she whispers to my wife, I'm going to let all three of you in first class completely free. Now, there was a length to the story, right? But the point from human hacking that I think makes it non-malicious is a couple things. One is I noticed when my wife had built that rapport with her, she chemically in our brain releases something called oxytocin, and you could see people getting happy and trusting. And then I gave her a choice. And this is the difference between manipulation and influence. By saying, hey, we probably can't afford it. Can you tell me what the path for upgrade is? I didn't say, hey, can you put us in first class? Which would have forced her to say either yes or no to her new best friend. So by giving her a choice, I left her feeling better for having met us and not having to force her into a corner. And, that to me is a great example of human hacking. We got first class tickets on Virgin. We tried that same method 6 more times, and it worked 4 out of 6.
Can I take you on my next trip? If I go someplace, and I'll pay for the food. You just take care of the. Now, for our listeners, what is that in a value fee? What was that? Probably like $5,000 or $10,000 in terms of upgrade.
Yeah, I think because if you bought those tickets just straight out, round trip, they were like $11,000. So it probably was. Yeah, it probably was like, between the three of us, it probably was like $12,000, $13,000 of tickets.
And to be fair, too, it didn't hurt the airline because these were open seats, I'm guessing. Yep. And it actually made a good customer, I'm sure, out of you, made for a good story.
Yeah. I only fly Virgin. And the best part is that because we didn't force her, we didn't corner her, she probably felt really good for helping a family. We had told her, the story went on, and I didn't give you all the detail, but we told her we had a really rough time. We were there to help some friends, and we had a long trip. So we were looking forward to just relaxing, but economy's so hard. I don't know if we can afford it. Can you tell us what it would cost to go from economy all the way up to maybe even premium economy? And by giving her all those choices, she had a way to say no to us without feeling guilty. So we left her feeling better for having met us.
I love that, and I think that's the perfect story. Now, and you mentioned this as I was going through your book, and really it's a fascinating book, and I'm going to ask you to tell us about it in a few seconds, but you start out with almost making it like a mystery story as you're sneaking around a plant. But one of the things you point out in the book, this allows us to know when this is being used against us.
Yeah.
So it's not if someone says, gee, I would never use that, or I'm not good at it, or I don't think I'd have any use for it. Maybe you won't be the proactive person, but if someone comes to your door, or if they bump into you and you're trying to get another free airplane flight from them or a car ride or something, they'll be aware of it and know how to play it. Chris, at this point in the show, I'd like to remind our audience that we're listening to The Secrets of Success on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm your host, Bill Horan. Today we're talking to author Christopher Hadnagy, Hadnagy. His book is Human Hacking, a great read and very informative, but also very interesting. Chris, would you tell us the details, where we can get it, and if there's a website where we can learn more?
Sure. So if you go to humanhackingbook.com, and the reason I send you there, because it's sold everywhere, Barnes & Noble's, Amazon, everywhere there's books. But if you go to that site, you can get the links to all of that. But there's also a resources page. And what I did is I built some extra resources for people that are reading the book that can help them get more out of it. Some worksheets, some downloadable pictures, some other things that may help with the person who's reading those chapters to visualize more of the lessons there. So humanhackingbook.com, and you can get all the info on where to find the book and how to buy it.
And again, the best part, I think, is that it's interesting. It's not something you feel like a textbook in school. Gee, I have to read this for the chemistry test or something. I got caught up at the beginning. I'm saying, why is this guy walking around this factory and doing it? And I kind of thought I knew where it's going, but I immediately flipped to the back cover. I go, is he one of those bad guys you see with the motorcycle gangs, or what's he going to look like? And you're so disarming because you just look like every man.
Yeah.
You know, and no offense, but probably
no, I don't take it offensive at all.
Of George Costanza, you would have gotten it that day.
Yeah.
And poor Jason Alexander no one would know of him today.
I don't take that as insulting, because I always tell people when I train, I teach a class about this, and I tell people to really consider, if this is your career, if this is what you want, really consider like tattoos and body modifications, because the less memorable you are, like the more that you just look like everybody else, the easier this job is. If you stand out because of, some other, whatever reason, then people will look at you and they go, I remember that guy or gal. So just look normal, look easygoing. I don't take that as an insult at all. For my job, that's probably the best compliment I can get.
Even on the weekend, if bank robbers wanted someone to join their group, you would be perfect.
I wouldn't do it, but I'd be maybe.
But you wouldn't do it. That's right. Now, by the way, kidding about crimes, just so our audience knows the stature of this isn't just kind of a fun thing to get free flights. If I read correctly in your book, you actually teach the FBI this information.
Yeah, I have the privilege of teaching the BAU college, the Behavioral Analysis Unit College. They put agents through that. So I get to teach them those skills. I've also been able to teach different branches of the government. I've been invited to the Pentagon to talk about this topic. This is from taking it out of the fun stuff that we just talked about. This is a national security issue. Like right now, there is a nation state attack on our country from, we believe, Russia, that are trying to hack the freezers that are holding the COVID vaccine. And
say that again?
They're trying to hack the freezers that hold the COVID vaccine. And they're doing it through phishing emails, which is a form of human hacking or social engineering. They're trying to phish the people who make the freezers to get the schematics, so that way they can figure out how to disable those freezers. And if they're successful, they'll ruin the vaccine. So this kind of skill set is something that governments, corporations need, which is why I'm in this industry. But just through the years, 15 or so years of doing this, I realized that there's ways that we can also use this as everyday average people, not in that way, but just in, winning friends, influencing people, and leave them feeling better for having met you. So that's the nature of this book. But this is a career and a job that is needed right now because of the world we live in.
It definitely is. And I'm going to put a little bug in your head, but you seem like one of those subject matters, and with the personality like your own and the field you go into, this would make an awesome TV show. I'll tell you, if you have one viewer, and I'll even though I don't drink that much beer, I'll buy the beer that advertises it, or the cigarettes, or even the car. But no, I think it would be fantastic, because some would be fun, but some would be corporate and very serious, like the vaccine, where we have to watch out for it. So now I think there's 4 important questions. I think it's on page 13 in your book that you mentioned that we have to look into. Could you tell our audience what those are?
Sure. So over the years of interacting with people, both as clients and outside, I began to analyze what reasons I would fail at a conversation. So why I would go into a conversation and it wouldn't work out the way I wanted. And every time I would notice that there was like a question in their mind that always ended the conversation, I would write that down. And that's where these 4 came from. So when you approach somebody, like if you were standing on the street and you saw me walking towards you, you don't know who I am, and you know that I'm not violent, I'm just going to talk to you. It looks like I'm about to approach you. You start asking, okay, who is this guy? What does he want? How long is this going to take? And am I a threat? Now, if we think about this, let's boil it down to something really simple and easy. I'm in a grocery store and I round the corner, and I'm a pretty big guy. I'm 6'3". I'm not a small guy. And I round the corner looking at my phone, and I almost bump into this tiny little woman, right? So she's little, and I could see she reels back in fear. We're both wearing masks, so we can't see each other's full faces. Now, at that moment in time, I have a choice to leave someone feeling better for having met me. She doesn't care about like who I am and how long it's going to take. The first thing is, am I a threat? So I need to answer that question for her. And the best way to do that is maybe stepping back and saying, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm like a bull in a china shop. I didn't even see you. And taking full blame and apologizing and then saying, oh man, I'm just one of those aloof guys shopping. I'll be on my way. Now, if you think about it, instead of leaving her like wondering if I was being aggressive towards her, I answered all four of those things in a 30-second sentence. And we parted our ways, and she's not nervous. She's not feeling like I was trying to run her over. I was trying to grab her or do anything weird to her. And that works if I'm even going to just now have a conversation with someone. I can apply those four things and answer them, and it disarms people right away.
I love that. And again, I'm thinking of that because if let's say I turn around and I bump someone, well, the first thing is to be aggressive, that anybody would be concerned with. Not that everybody is, but someone might say, watch it, stupid, or get out of my way. But if I say, oh, excuse me, I'm so sorry, I just got out of the waiting room, or took some medicine, right? 99% of the people would probably say, oh, I didn't mean it, it was my fault. Or we would make a match, and I see you smiling because I'm sure that's the way you kind of get around people and get those things that you want and get into the doors, etc. I'm just thinking as we're talking, is there one or two things that you want to warn our audience against that may be used against us right now when next time we get a phone call, someone at the door, or maybe at work?
Yeah. So right now we're in a weird time in human history. We are so separated and isolated now, even more so because of COVID. We are doing everything over digital format. And we're tired and we're stressed. When are we going to get a vaccine? Are we going to get a vaccine? Can we travel again? None of these things that we know. Many people have lost all their employment. They're stressed about that. So all of those things, attackers use that emotional hijacking to get us to fall for scams. So what I tell people, this is a big thing, is when you're on the phone or you get an email, if you feel overly emotional while you're being asked to make a decision, stop. You need time. And there's no FBI, IRS, anything that's going to just bust your door down and arrest you from an email or a phone call unless you did something illegal. So don't fall for that. You have time. You could say, I'll call you back, or I need to look into this, or I need to think about this. Do not make decisions when you feel overly emotional. People just get out of the doctor's office. They're waiting for their COVID test. Somebody calls them. That could be a huge problem.
What I'd like to know, I know from going through your book, empathy is very important. Why is that word so important?
Well, I think it goes back to what I was saying previously about the world that we're in right now, that we're in this area of the world where we've lost the ability to communicate. And one of the things that I've noticed is we've lost the ability to disagree without being disagreeable. So if I disagree with something you believe or say, then it feels like I have to also hate you as a person. And I don't know why we got to this point, but we're there. And empathy helps us to realize that communication is not all about me. So I don't have to get everything I want out of every interaction. Maybe communication is okay if we just get what you want out of this conversation. And if I can do that and still leave you feeling better for having met me, then we've accomplished a goal. We've communicated openly, and using an empathetic approach helps everyone feel better. And you get rewarded when you use empathy. Your brain rewards you through a release of dopamine and oxytocin. So it allows you to feel better about yourself when you use those type of skills in communicating.
I know you mentioned that the starting point or most important point is to know yourself. In what regard, if I wanted to do this and I was taking this as a class, what would be my analysis of myself? Is it just I'm 5'10", I weigh this, et cetera, or is it I'm a grouch, I'm a nice guy? What am I looking for?
It's more about knowing how you communicate. In that chapter, I'm talking about something called disc communication profiling. And it's a profiling tool that was developed by a psychologist in the 1930s. His name was William Marston. It's of course been enhanced through the years. And what DISC does is it tells you how you like to communicate and how you like to be communicated with. So for me, I'm a very direct person. And a direct person, self-awareness tells me that sometimes I can be a little blunt, or I can lack tact, or things like that. So as long as I know that, then when I go into an interaction, if I'm aware of those flaws, I can be a little more aware of not being upsetting to a person. And maybe if I see someone getting angry, I can start to self-analyze and go, wait, did I do something here? Was I too direct? Was I too blunt? And that helps me to see if I can improve my communication profile. So by knowing yourself, you actually enhance the ability to communicate with more people than just ones that are like you.
Once again, I'd like to remind our listeners that you're listening to The Secrets of Success on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm your host, Bill Horan. Today we're talking to Christopher Hadnagy, Hadnagy. He's the author of a fascinating book, Human Hacking. And Chris, would you tell us, one, where we can get the book and the website where we can learn more of this great information?
So humanhackingbook.com is the best site to go. We have a resources page on there, but you can find the book on Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, or really anywhere that books are sold. You can find it and be able to, if you go to the humanhackingbook.com, you'll be able to interact with other people that are reading it as well as myself. And there's a lot of resources there to help you with understanding the book more.
And I think anyone who's listening to the show would want to get a copy of this, or at least check out the website, because this is a fun, easy way that you can get a lot of things in the world. And especially, as I said, if you had the advantage of seeing Chris, he looks like the most unassuming person, and he's getting all these freebies from airlines and other groups that he deals with, and I want to be like him. Let's put it that way. He's my new idol. So well, I'm going to get a poster from him after the show, put it up in my bedroom, and he's laughing at me right now. So now, you mentioned in your book that the word or acronym DISC, D-I-S-C, the 4 communication styles. Can you tell us briefly about those?
Sure. So D stands for dominant. So that's a very direct type of person. They tend to be a little more task-orientated and very direct-oriented. Then you have I, which is an influencer. And they're direct, but they're people-oriented. So that means that they're more lively and spirited. They're the kind of people you would see as like a salesperson. Then you have S, and those are people that like to communicate very indirectly, and they really enjoy people. They're supporters, steady. They really enjoy being the team player and helping others. And then finally is C. C-type, or a conscientious communicator, is someone who's very much into details. They're task-focused and they're indirect, but they love details and lists and bullet points and understanding the how of a situation, and understanding all those steps to get there. So those 4 different types of communicators, we all have a little bit of each, but one of those generally dominates our communication profile.
Can we, or do we want to change our communication profile to be more like you?
Oh, that's a great question. So definitely not. You want to keep who you are, because that's natural. That's what our DISC profile is, actually psychological, based on our upbringing and our family history and things like that. So we don't want to alter who you are. But having that self-awareness that we just spoke about a few minutes ago, that helps us to understand where the weaknesses of each profile comes, and then altering that slightly so we're not offensive or off-putting to others. So I don't think everyone should communicate like me. My COO in my company, he's a very high C, and he's more detail-oriented and focused and introverted. But we get along great because we know how to communicate with each other. So I don't think it's about altering who you are to be like other people. It's about knowing how to make the best use of your particular profile.
And I think I read in your book that you said you started out with kind of the drill sergeant's profile, I guess maybe lacking empathy and just telling people, do this, do that.
I did. I remember one of my
that doesn't seem like you at all. As I'm looking at you, you look like the friendliest, nicest guy. So is that a way to say that people can change?
Yes, you can change. Now, I'm still very direct, but what I've learned over the last decade of training myself is that although I can be very direct, is that I need to also be friendlier. So I didn't change my profile altogether. What I did is I started lessening the weaknesses, the aggressive parts, and heightening the more fun and laid back parts. So I think it's interesting because, people will say, well, didn't you just change who you are? No, I didn't. I just learned how to communicate better. That's it. So like you said, I started off very like, here's what we're going to do, and you need to do this, and learned that that's tiring and stressful for many people. So this is a better way of opening people up and communicating in a more positive way with many people.
I'm feeling as I'm listening to you answer these questions, this is almost like having a human map of the people around us, where physically we want to know, do we go north for 2 miles, then south? Here it may be, do we talk nicely to the neighbor, or would they rather a clip demanding style, do this, do that, in order to get things done or get along, et cetera, et cetera? And based on your nodding, I think I've hit that correctly.
Yeah, I love the way you worded that, like a human map. It's once you can navigate those streets for each person, you'll find that your communications are so much more beneficial for both you and the other person. And you'll find it's also easier to get things out of the conversation that you may want, because you're not so focused on getting what you want. It just naturally comes because you have that roadmap.
I think there was either a subheading or a chapter heading that was called The Art of the Start. What is that?
So when you start off a conversation with someone, when you just start building that initial setup to have that conversation, a lot of times the way people approach that is, okay, here's what I want out of this. I want you to give me some money for a donation. So that's what I go into the conversation with, but that doesn't really help anyone. So the art of the start is learning how to start the conversation thinking about the other person. So yes, my end goal is I'd like you to give a donation to this charity, let's say. And how am I going to get there? Well, I need to know a little bit more about you. Do you even value this type of charity? Is this charity something that's close to your heart? Are you the right person to talk to? Do you make those decisions in the family or the business? Understanding this will make the conversation more holistic, and it will make it more beneficial, as opposed to just shooting directly forward, like this is what I need to do, so I'm going to go through. And that art of start is learning how to do all of that so you can be more effective in your conversational goals.
Chris, we want to thank you so much for being with us today, and remind our audience that we've been talking to Christopher Hadnagy. The book is Human Hacking. Once again, tell us the website and where we can get it. humanhackingbook.com. Christopher, thank you so much for joining us today and educating us on this important topic.
Thank you so much.
I'd like to remind our audience that you've been listening to The Secrets of Success on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm your host, Bill Horan. Please join us again next week at the same time when we will continue our journey to success.